tuned in to Teng Tools Muscle Garage, the home of New Zealand's toughest muscle cars, hot rods and street machines. Proudly brought to you by Teng Tools in association with Mount Shop, Maguire's and Niedercar. This week, 32,000 horses worth of shed road and good keen Ford man Tony Jeff's collection of FEs and Galaxies and all the tales that come with them. But first, a Bay of Plenty family bit bad by the Mustang bug. Thanks to Niedercar, meet the Sperlings.
I probably must give the credit to our mum, because she was the one that really wanted to bring the brothers together. And when I got my Mustang, that was cool. Then brother Ray got his one. She said, oh, it'd be great if Brian had one. And next minute he just turns up with his car. Within a couple of weeks, we actually understood what mum was saying, that it actually really brings the family together.
We all grew up around cars. My dad ran an earth moving business. He had a lot of good cars. HT Monaro, two-door GTS.
So while the Sperlings are a family that grew up around a large range of automobiles, it's clear they've narrowed things down a bit of late.
Why the full Mustang? Why not? It's a great car.
People just know the Mustang. They're built to go fast, yeah, and look good.
Classic cars like the Mustangs are a perfect way for all of us to get together.
We don't go out to brunch like your normal family. We're always just like, want to go for a ride, and it's so much cooler, you know, it's something unique to us.
Yeah, being the astute viewers that you are, you would have picked up that the Sperling Mustang addiction is a multi-generational one. For Ray's daughter, Pascal, there was little hope of escape.
If I went to a Corvette, my family would disown me, you know? No, I love them. I love the fastbacks. I love the sound of them. I love the engines. I love everything about them.
Proud members of the Bay of Plenty Mustang Owners Club, the Sperling family are very visible in the hobby. The four Mustangs are all individual and all immaculately presented. They represent much blood, sweat and at times probably the odd tear.
We do a lot of the work ourselves. This car in particular, I've spent 7 weeks on my back inside the driver's seat rewiring all the loom. I'd like to spend being on my back doing other things, but I've been stuck under the steering wheel of this thing.
I actually dislocated my shoulder once. My shoulder popped back in, put the belt around it and got back on the car because I had a brand new headliner that had already had the glue on and it had to be glued up. So I used one hand and finished the job, and I was pretty happy with myself, and they were really worried about me, but all I was interested in was the lining of my Mustang.
Cars were in the Sperling DNA clearly, but it was Rob's 302 powered 65 that got the Mustang ball rolling.
It was a 20-footer car, black on black, out of California. One of my parents at Taranaki Boys unfortunately drove out of the school car park and sideswiped right along it to miss another vehicle that was in the wrong lane. And I started the journey of totally rebuilding it. So I took it right back to bare metal, engine out. I was very fortunate to have been a teacher for so many years, and a lot of my ex-students are now own their own companies around Taranaki. Yeah, sweet Rob, bring it down here. And I had my students help me with a theme. Blacks and silvers all the way through. There's very few other colours on it. Not so much bling bling on it.
Twin brother Ray decided he quite liked the look of the pony car, locating a 67 fastback for himself. Running its original 289 and already the recipient of a heap of hours, Ray's gone for a resto mod approach.
Yeah, I was really fortunate that a lot of the panel work had been done on it, and we decided that there were needed a lot more dressing up in the engine bay, a change in gearbox, and adding a little bit of flair on the side and the air vents, etc. And a whole bunch of other things that, gosh, I can't even remember now. It's been hundreds of hours of work on it. But over the last 6 or 7 years, yeah, we've spent a lot of money, but a lot of time, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Many of the hours have been clocked up with daughter Pascal by Ray's side. Not just passing down the love of driving an all-American pony car, but also the skills to repair and maintain one. The reward isn't too shabby either, with Pascal in return putting plenty of miles on Ray's other car, this 66 drop top. Originally a 6, the Mustang now runs an all V8 driveline and does tend to turn heads, especially with a teen behind the wheel.
I'd park it on the street and then I'd go back to it, oh, I've got my wallet, and people would stare at you as if you're breaking it. Ever since I was a kid, you know, driving has just been so much of a passion for me, and when you get a car with a V8 in it, you're never going to lose that. I mean, I'm young as it is. Normal people get into it when they're a bit older, you know, as a hobby, but I think it's going to get pretty bad when I get into my 20s.
Brian is the youngest of the brothers, and with plenty of time spent across the ditch, considers himself more of a Falcon guy at heart. But when faced with this 71, you can forgive him for making a bit of an exception.
These cars here remind me of the Falcons, the XAs, XBs, XCs. Boss Tribute, it's running 351C, Cleveland, built in Cleveland, Ohio, through an FMX gearbox and running 9-inch. A 300 ratio, which is tall legs. When you get up on high speed, it'll just keep going. There's no stopping it. I'm the youngest one of the three brothers, but I got the biggest engine.
While a family drive makes for something of a small rolling car show in its own right, the Sperlings too are seasoned campaigners in the Mustang show circuit, and they've been pretty successful in that endeavour. Fortunately, to keep family get-togethers nice and civil, the brothers all compete in separate classes. It's more camaraderie than rivalry in this, a horsepower hobby fit for the whole family.
You know, at the end of the day, it's all about family. The car's one thing, but it's the people that's really cool, and I think Mustangs really do that.
Right, thanks to those nice folk at Maguire's, we're down south, checking out the impressive collection of keen Ford man, Tony Jeffs.
My parents were more into rugby and league and stuff like that, and I popped out and I just loved cars, bikes, anything that moved, and they just couldn't work out where I was coming from. So I spent every single moment I could, or every cent I could, to go-kart racing or push bikes or anything with wheels started me off. Cars ruled my life. When I got my first job, I was a mechanic, which I loved, and then I decided I didn't want to be a 50-year-old mechanic with a bad back, so I went to sign writing because I could sign write race cars and be with race cars and stuff like that. It was just in the blood. I couldn't help it.
An accumulation of those years of motoring addiction is what you see here in Tony's Kaiapoi shed. He's an FE guy, is Tony, so you'll find plenty in his collection, many of them wrapped in Ford's Galaxy. But just when you think you have them all figured out, you'll spot a bit of a weakness for British stuff in there too. Not to mention an impressive side order of motorbikes and power cycles. And they all have a story.
It's not even cars. I've got an engine down there which I had in my first pre-65 car, and it did 3 seasons of racing. Then it came out and it went into a flat bottom boat, and it went to the bottom of Ruataniwha and back up again. Then I rebuilt it again and went into a Galaxy road car, which I got a ticket at 175k, and I've still got the engine there. It's got so much history, and that's just an engine, it's not even a car. And then you start talking about some of the cars I've got and the good times and the bad times we've had in them. Yeah, they've all got their own personalities, they've all got their own stories. You could be here for 2 days and I could go around every car, every motorbike, every bit, and give you a talk about them, and there's just so much in them. My 62 Galaxy, which I've built and raced for 30 years, is probably my baby. It's part of me, and now it's gone to my boy who's racing it. We were going to race it together. That's one of my loves. My Galaxy, my R code 427, I love that car. It was one that I never could afford, but it was always my number one car, and it came to a point my wife said, just go and get one. I'm sick of you talking about it, just go and get one. So that's how it is. I'm a Ford man through and through, but I have got a little British side too, where I've got my little Bedfords and Cortinas and Escorts and stuff like that, which I love. I definitely love hot rods. I love building them, working on them. I've got a group of mates who've all got hot rods and all help each other out, but it always comes back down to the race cars, the rallying, the circuit racing, all that sort of stuff.
Yep, it seems if it's worth driving, then it's worth driving fast.
I have had a period of time where the Ministry of Transport has had my licence more than I've had my licence. Yes, I think I've grown over time, and I'm not as bad as I used to be. Now I tend to keep it all on the track and keep it all above board.
It's not just the circuits, rally stages or burnout pads that have been battered by Tony's right boot over the years. the quarter mile has had its share too, sometimes in the most unlikely of vehicles. Surfy Sam, once a mild-mannered family cruiser, has morphed into a test bed for the circuit car's driveline combos. Dropping in a healthy 427 and sequential box has seen the Galaxy lift the fronts on its way to a mid-11. Now boasting 100 or so more horses, the goal is to dip into the 10s before the running gear will be plucked back out for the race car. Yep, the 427s are Tony's weapon of choice, and if you're looking for a car Ford shoehorned them into from the factory, then the R-Code Galaxy is about as good as it gets.
In 1963, they went NASCAR racing Ford, and they had a box top and they had a 406, and the Mopars and Chevys gave them whipping. So halfway through the year, they made this car, which is a 63.5. They put a fast roof on it and they put the 427 in it. To get it homologated halfway through the year, they had to make 3,000 of them. Today, out of that 3,000, there's around about 300 left. They have non-power steer, non-power brakes, 475 horsepower, dual carbs, all factory, so they don't stop and they don't handle, so a lot of them got written off. This one here was lucky enough to survive because it was owned for a year by a guy called Gordon Cooper, who was an astronaut, and when he came back down from space, he got to lease any car he wanted to for $1 a year. So that's how that one survived rather than went straight into NASCAR racing. We found it in a museum 5 stories up in a casino in Vegas and ended up bringing it home. So we drove it across to California, put it in the ship and bring it home, and been driving ever since.
And driving is something that Tony has no plans to let up on. He's spoilt for choice too with this impressive assortment, offering the right vehicle for any occasion.
To my dying day, cars will be around me. I'll be buried in a car. Same with motorbikes, you know, the passion of getting on a bike and going for a ride, and even down to push bikes. I ride around Kaipua in an old grandma's bike. I look like a hobo, but I enjoy it and I don't care what anyone else thinks. I've probably tried everything. I tried a bit of offshore powerboat racing, motorcycle racing, go-karts, anything which has got a motor or anything in, I'm into, and just love, and still love.
Protection of hybrid ceramic.
Whoa.
Now in 3 easy-to-use products. In original spray wax, now as a liquid wax, and a spray detailer. Meguiar's hybrid ceramic family with advanced SiO2 technology. Meguiar's, ceramic made easy.
You're back with Teng Tools Muscle Garage. Right, 32,000 horses worth of shed road, thanks to our mates at Mount Shop. When Australia's Aeroflow Outlaw Nitro Funny Car Series hit our shores a few months back, it was a grand plan with more than a few hurdles to climb. You see, while the series hit strips all over Australia, and Australia is a big place, between each round, the majority of the cars returned to their Sydney base for one serious health check. With 2020's New Zealand leg supposed to have included 2 events, Medi and a coronavirus cancelled Masterton, the crew found themselves in uncharted territory, challenged with the overhaul of 8 cars, not just away from the workshop, but in a different country altogether.
Oh, logistically to bring the whole series over here has been massive. We brought 8 cars, we brought a wheel stander, and not only the people and the parts that come with it, but the tools, the fuel, the oil. 2 transporters that needed to move around the country. We've got containers that needed to move around. When we loaded up, I'll tell you what, those trucks were full to the brim to make sure we had everything we could possibly have and could think of having, and plus some more just on top, just in case. When we're flying over here, you know, for a few days before, we're still going, have we got it all? Have we got it all? But so far, so good. It's not like you can just shoot back home and grab something if you've forgotten it.
With Medi-Medi's first leg deemed a roaring success, 6 of the crew stayed on New Zealand soil, tasked with servicing the funny car fleet in preparation for the scheduled and later cancelled Masterton meet. But in the world of 5-second nitro funny cars, the word service doesn't mean a quick oil change.
Yeah, the service for us is quite complex. We literally pull the car down till it's nothing but a block sitting in the car with a crank in it. We check the crank, we check the rods, we check the pistons, we check the heads, we check the blowers, we pull the clutches out, with gearboxes, diffs. Basically everything from front to the back of the car is pulled right apart, checked, serviced, anything that needs to be changed is changed so that it's absolutely 100% ready to go. We can't afford to have any issues on race day because we're, as I said many times, and everyone's probably heard me, sick of me saying it, but it's all about the show and it's all about entertaining the people who come and watch.
For the weeks following Medi-Medi's race day, the crew of 6 would call New Plymouth's Pertec Taranaki workshop their home away from home. But perhaps not quite as far from home as you might think. 4 of this Aussie service crew are in fact Kiwis.
Probably about 18, 20 months ago now. Morris and Mitchell, they sort of both messaged me and said, when can you come over? We want to chat. So I was straight on the first plane over with my partner, and there was no no to it. It was sort of a basic answer. It was always going to happen. So live, breathe, do everything, drag racing. So it was an easy answer for me.
Usually stationed at the Sydney headquarters, Gareth doesn't find himself short on work with 10 funny cars and 5 fuel altereds to attend to. The Aeroflow Outlaw Nitro Funny Car Series is built on a match-proven formula of prioritising the fan experience with tight side-by-side racing. Keeping things close means powering each funny car with near identical running gear.
Basically a Hemi-based engine, they have 413 cubic inches, clutch behind them, Crower, 3 discs with a B&J. It's a good recipe to go fast. They're roughly about 4 to 4,500 horsepower. No readings on torque, it's just fast. We make sure it can do 3 runs before it leaves the shop. They go out, they go fast. We all love it. So that's the main thing.
These cars are really cool in the fact that we have no data loggers. Definitely brings a bit of old schoolness back into play where you're not looking at graphs, you're going old school, you're looking at spark plugs and clutch wear and what the driver tells you what happened. Everything changes so much on these that we can make 400 or 500 horsepower difference when the air conditions change. And obviously when you make a massive horsepower difference like that, how much clutch you need to apply to the racetrack changes. But then if the racetrack changes too, you then have to go back and change your horsepower output. So throw all these ingredients in the little pot, you mix it up and you hope it works. But it's just a big combination of getting it all right. I like having no computers. I think it really does brings the drivers back into it. It definitely brings the tuner back into it, having to look at the plugs. But what it also does is it helps us keep these cars at a level where they're still going down the racetrack. We're not hurting parts. We're not trying to find the thousandths of a second because people in the grandstand can't tell the difference. Us racers can. And don't get me wrong, we're still chasing the little bit, even doing these cars the way we're doing them. And it is ultra competitive. But to the people in the stands, that hundredths or thousandths of a second or 0.4 of a mile an hour doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change the show. By adding all this technology, and if it's not visible from the grandstands, what's really the point?
You got a feel for this tight-knit team behind the Aeroflow Outlaw Nitro Funny Car Series, hamstrung by the bushfires on their home turf, while the New Zealand Leap of Faith was first plagued by bad weather before the second Masterton round was canned by a worldwide pandemic, of all things. Whether one New Zealand run was enough, we'll have to wait and see. But whatever the future may hold, for the Kiwis in this Aussie crew, the chance to strut their stuff on New Zealand soil was an opportunity that sure doesn't crop up every day.
It's my home track, huge for me and really humbling, and it's awesome that Graham gives us these opportunities. It's awesome to be a part of it and continue on in Australia.
All 6 guys that are here, they've all race cars or have race cars, they've built race cars. They're all as addicted and as passionate about the sport as any of the drivers or any of the teams. Seeing all the race cars go down the racetrack lap after lap, it's a pretty proud feeling when you know you've been involved in making that happen. And all our guys here, they have a passion for it.
Teng Tools Muscle Garage was proudly brought to you by Teng Tools. Get organised. Mount Shop, undercar specialists. Maguire's, people who love cars love Maguire's. And Need a Car, the easy way to research and buy cars online.